The most dangerous mistake is believing you already know someone's story before they have spoken a single word. Saturday afternoons in Brookhaven, Georgia, always seemed to move at a gentler pace. Families wandered through the downtown square with paper cups of coffee in their hands. Children laughed as they chased one another around the old stone fountain, and local musicians filled the warm spring air with familiar country melodies. The sidewalks were lined with small bookstores, family-owned bakeries, and flower shops whose colorful displays spilled onto the brick pavement. It was the kind of afternoon that reminded people why they loved living in a close-knit American town where strangers still smiled as they passed each other. Maya Brooks walked through the square carrying a small paper bag filled with fresh pastries she had promised to bring to the community youth center a few blocks away. At 22 years old, she had developed the quiet confidence that came from treating everyone with kindness instead of expecting recognition. She paused to hold the door open for an elderly couple leaving a pharmacy, smiled as a little girl proudly showed her a colorful drawing, and thanked a street vendor after buying a bottle of water. Nothing about her appearance suggested urgency or conflict. She was simply another young woman enjoying a peaceful afternoon beneath a bright blue sky. Less than 100 yards away, Officer Ryan Cole slowly guided his patrol sport utility vehicle through downtown traffic while scanning the busy sidewalks. Years on the job had convinced him that quick instincts often mattered more than careful observation. That belief had gradually become a habit, and the habit had quietly become certainty. As his eyes swept across the crowd, they settled on Maya, standing beside a parked sedan while checking a message on her phone. The moment lasted only a second, but in Ryan's mind it was enough to transform curiosity into suspicion. He eased his vehicle toward the curb, stepped outside, adjusted the radio clip to his uniform, and walked directly toward her with the confidence of someone who believed he had already reached the correct conclusion. Maya noticed the approaching officer almost immediately. She slipped her phone into her purse and greeted him with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, officer." Ryan acknowledged the greeting with a brief nod before asking a series of direct questions about where she was going and why she had stopped near the vehicle. Maya answered calmly and respectfully, explaining that she was on her way to deliver food to the youth center after making a quick stop at the bakery. Her voice remained steady, her movements deliberate, and every action reflected someone trying to avoid misunderstanding. Even so, Ryan's expression never softened. One by one, nearby pedestrians began slowing their pace. A delivery driver paused beside his truck. A college student removed one earbud after sensing the unusual tension. An elderly veteran sitting on a nearby bench quietly folded his newspaper and looked toward the unfolding conversation. The ordinary sounds of the afternoon gradually faded beneath an uneasy silence as more people realized something unexpected was happening in the middle of their peaceful town. Maya continued answering every question without complaint, never raising her voice and never challenging the officer's authority. Yet with every passing moment, it became increasingly clear that this encounter was no longer about gathering information. It had become something else entirely, something shaped less by facts than by assumptions. None of the people watching could know that cameras mounted above storefronts, inside patrol vehicles, and in the hands of ordinary citizens had already begun preserving every word and every decision. And none of them could imagine that before the afternoon came to an end, the quiet choices made on that familiar sidewalk would leave a lasting mark on everyone involved. The questions continued with measured precision, but the atmosphere around them changed in ways that could not be ignored. Maya Brooks answered each one respectfully, speaking clearly enough for both Officer Ryan Cole and the growing number of bystanders to hear. She explained where she had spent the morning, why she had stopped downtown, and where she planned to go next. Every answer remained consistent, calm, and remarkably patient. She never interrupted, never argued, and never allowed frustration to replace courtesy. The contrast between her composure and the tension spreading through the square became more noticeable with every passing minute. Ryan, however, remained convinced that persistence would eventually uncover something he believed he had missed. He requested identification, and Maya informed him exactly where it was located before slowly retrieving it from her purse. Ryan examined the driver's license carefully, comparing the photograph to the woman standing before him. Everything appeared ordinary. He returned to his patrol sport utility vehicle to verify the information through the department database, while Maya waited exactly where he had instructed. The spring breeze carried the scent of fresh bread from the nearby bakery, and the church bell several blocks away quietly marked the passing hour. What had begun as a peaceful Saturday afternoon now felt suspended in uncomfortable uncertainty. More pedestrians slowed to observe from a respectful distance. A young father quietly lifted his daughter into his arms so she could see over the crowd, while an elderly woman standing outside the flower shop whispered that the young woman being questioned had never seemed anything but polite whenever she visited downtown. A college student standing beside a bus stop activated the recording feature on his phone without saying a word. Across the street, the owner of the bakery recognized Maya immediately. She had become a familiar customer over the past year, often purchasing snacks before spending her afternoons volunteering with children at the neighborhood youth center. He watched with growing concern, unable to reconcile the woman he knew with the suspicion unfolding before him. Inside the patrol vehicle, the dashboard camera continued recording automatically while Ryan reviewed the information displayed on his computer screen. Maya Brooks, valid driver's license, current address, no outstanding warrants, no alerts, no criminal history associated with the records available to him. The results provided no confirmation of the concerns that had prompted the stop. Ryan stared at the monitor for another moment, then looked back through the windshield toward Maya. Instead of reconsidering his assumptions, he convinced himself that additional questioning would provide the clarity the computer had not. He stepped back onto the sidewalk and resumed the conversation with renewed confidence. Maya answered every new question exactly as she had answered the first. Her voice remained even, her posture relaxed, and her expression reflected quiet dignity rather than fear. Several witnesses exchanged uncertain glances, sensing that the encounter had already lasted much longer than they expected. They could not explain why, but something about the situation no longer felt routine. Above them, security cameras attached to nearby businesses silently captured the same scene from different angles. Ryan's body camera documented every word. The dashboard camera preserved every movement. The phones held by ordinary citizens added still more perspectives to an afternoon that was gradually becoming one of the most thoroughly recorded moments the quiet town had ever witnessed. None of those cameras understood assumptions, reputations, or appearances. They simply captured the truth exactly as it unfolded, second by second, while neither the officer nor the crowd realized how important those ordinary recordings would soon become. Officer Ryan Cole studied the information on his computer screen one more time, expecting some overlooked detail to justify the concern that had first drawn his attention. Instead, every line confirmed the same simple facts. Maya Brooks possessed a valid driver's license. Her information matched state records, and nothing in the database suggested she presented any danger to the public. The quiet hum of the patrol vehicle filled the brief silence as Ryan leaned back in his seat, weighing what he believed against what the evidence actually showed. Outside, Maya remained exactly where he had asked her to stand. She did not pace. She did not complain. She simply waited with remarkable patience, occasionally glancing toward the paper bag resting on the hood of a nearby bench. Knowing the pastries inside were meant for children who were expecting her at the youth center. Every passing minute increased her concern that she would arrive late, yet she never allowed that concern to become frustration. The growing crowd noticed the same quiet composure. A retired schoolteacher standing near the bookstore quietly remarked that the young woman had handled every question with respect. The bakery owner nodded in agreement, remembering how Maya always greeted his employees by name and thanked them before leaving. Nearby, the college student continued recording, not because he expected confrontation, but because the unusually long encounter no longer felt ordinary. Above the intersection, traffic cameras observed the same scene from a fixed angle, while business security cameras silently documented the sidewalk below. Ryan stepped out of his patrol vehicle and returned to Maya with a thoughtful expression that lasted only a moment before determination replaced it once again. He asked several additional questions, each one searching for an inconsistency that never appeared. Maya answered carefully, explaining where she had volunteered that morning, why she had stopped at the bakery, and how much farther she needed to walk before reaching the community center. Her answers remained calm, detailed, and consistent with the information already verified by the department database. The atmosphere around them shifted again. People were no longer slowing down because they were curious. They were staying because they sensed they were watching an important moment unfold. Parents quietly guided their children to one side of the sidewalk while continuing to observe from a respectful distance. Conversations became softer. Even the street musician near the fountain paused between songs, noticing that nearly every face in the square had turned toward the same place. Miles away, inside the Brookhaven Police Department Communications Center, dispatcher Angela Morris monitored routine radio traffic while processing records inquiries from officers across the city. One notification caught her attention because the requested records check had remained active longer than most ordinary encounters. She opened the file again to confirm that everything had been transmitted correctly. Her eyes settled on a single name displayed across the monitor: Maya Brooks. Angela quietly reviewed the information a second time, then compared it with another internal record that had nothing to do with criminal history and everything to do with department administration. She did not jump to conclusions. She simply recognized a familiar surname and understood that careful verification mattered. Without alarming anyone, she forwarded a brief notification to Sergeant Daniel Ross requesting that he review the active field inquiry when time permitted. It was a routine message delivered in a routine way, yet it quietly marked the beginning of a chain of events that would soon transform an ordinary Saturday afternoon into one of the most closely examined incidents the Brookhaven Police Department had faced in years. Sergeant Daniel Ross read Angela Morris's message twice before opening the active records inquiry on his office computer. At first glance, everything appeared routine. The officer in the field had requested identification verification. The database had returned a valid record, and there were no warrants or public safety alerts attached to Maya Brooks. Yet something about the situation continued to bother him. It was not the records themselves. It was the unusually long duration of the encounter despite the complete absence of information suggesting criminal activity. Daniel leaned back in his chair and quietly opened another internal directory used for department administration. The surname Brooks immediately caught his attention. He did not react with surprise. Instead, years of experience reminded him that assumptions had no place in professional judgment. Before taking any further action, he decided to gather facts instead of opinions. He contacted Captain Olivia Grant through the department's secure communications system and briefly explained that he would appreciate another set of experienced eyes reviewing the available recordings. Olivia accepted the request without hesitation. She had spent years overseeing professional standards and understood that even routine encounters deserved careful review whenever questions began to emerge. Within minutes, the department's secure evidence system displayed the live body camera feed together with the patrol vehicle dashboard camera. Olivia watched quietly, making no comments while the encounter unfolded exactly as it had occurred. She observed Maya answering each question politely, maintaining the same calm tone from beginning to end. She watched Ryan continue asking additional questions even after the records inquiry confirmed Maya's identity and revealed no public safety concerns. Olivia reached for a notepad and began writing down simple timestamps rather than conclusions. Facts first, opinions later. That principle had guided every investigation she had ever supervised. Back on Franklin Avenue, the afternoon sunlight stretched longer shadows across the brick sidewalks as more people paused to observe from a respectful distance. The excitement usually associated with unexpected events had faded. In its place came quiet concern. The bakery owner stepped outside once again and noticed that the paper bag Maya had purchased still rested untouched nearby. He knew children at the community youth center would soon be wondering why she had not arrived. A retired schoolteacher quietly remarked that patience like hers was becoming increasingly rare. Even the street musician resumed playing softer melodies, as though the town itself had recognized that something unusually serious was taking place. Ryan remained focused on finding an explanation that matched his original instincts. He reviewed Maya's identification again, compared every detail against the information displayed in his patrol computer, and found the same result each time. Nothing contradicted her account. Nothing supported additional suspicion. Even so, he hesitated to end the encounter. Somewhere between confidence and certainty, he had lost the willingness to reconsider his first impression. High above the intersection, traffic cameras continued preserving every passing minute. Nearby storefront security systems quietly recorded the same sidewalk from different angles. Citizens holding their phones captured still more perspectives. None of those recordings favored one person over another. They simply documented what happened exactly as it occurred. Inside police headquarters, Olivia finished reviewing the first portion of the body camera footage and looked toward Daniel with a thoughtful expression. She did not criticize anyone or predict the outcome. She simply said, "Keep every recording secured." Daniel nodded immediately, understanding that whatever happened next, the truth would not depend upon memory alone. It would depend upon evidence that had already begun telling the story long before anyone realized how important that ordinary Saturday afternoon would become. Chief Marcus Brooks was reviewing preparations for the department's upcoming Community Leadership Forum when Captain Olivia Grant requested a secure call. The interruption was unusual enough that he immediately stepped away from his desk and activated the encrypted connection inside his office. Olivia did not offer opinions or assumptions. Instead, she shared only verified facts. A field encounter involving Officer Ryan Cole had continued well beyond the length of an ordinary records check. Multiple cameras had documented the interaction from different angles, and every available record confirmed the civilian's identity without revealing any warrants, alerts, or immediate public safety concerns. Marcus listened without speaking. His years in law enforcement had taught him that leadership demanded restraint before reaction. "Have all recordings been preserved?" he asked calmly. "Yes, Chief," Olivia replied. "Body camera, dashboard camera, traffic cameras, and several voluntary civilian recordings are already being secured." Marcus nodded slowly, even though no one could see him through the call. "Good. Do not interrupt the encounter unless there is an immediate safety concern. Let the facts develop naturally, and make certain every recording remains untouched." After ending the conversation, he remained standing beside the office window overlooking the city he had served for more than 2 decades. He believed justice depended upon complete information, never partial impressions. Before leaving his office, he quietly opened the secure video feed connected to the responding officer's body camera. The recording appeared on the screen without sound for a brief moment before the audio synchronized. Marcus watched carefully as Maya Brooks answered every question with patience and respect. Her calm expression never changed. She never challenged the officer, never spoke with hostility, and never attempted to escalate the conversation. For just a second, the expression on Marcus's face softened, not because he saw his daughter, but because he saw someone protecting her dignity under difficult circumstances. Even then, he chose not to intervene. If the department expected every citizen to trust its procedures, then its leaders had to trust those same procedures as well. Back on Franklin Avenue, the atmosphere had become remarkably quiet. The crowd had stopped growing, yet very few people chose to leave. They sensed they were witnessing something important, although none of them fully understood why. The bakery owner glanced once more at the unopened paper bag resting nearby and quietly shook his head, knowing the children waiting at the youth center would soon wonder why Maya had not arrived. The college student continued recording from across the sidewalk, making sure the entire interaction remained visible from beginning to end. Ryan Cole remained focused on the questions before him, convinced that one more conversation, one more explanation, or one more observation would somehow validate the instinct that had guided his decisions from the very beginning. Yet every passing minute seemed to move the situation farther away from his original assumptions rather than closer to them. The verified records remained unchanged. Maya's answers remained consistent. The witnesses remained calm. The cameras continued recording without interruption. Inside police headquarters, Marcus reached for his department jacket, picked up his service cap, and walked quietly toward the parking garage. He selected an unmarked department sedan rather than an official command vehicle. There would be no emergency lights, no sirens, and no dramatic arrival. Before starting the engine, he spoke softly into the secure department radio. "Maintain the scene exactly as it is. Preserve every fact. I will be there shortly." The transmission lasted only a few seconds, but it quietly marked the moment when the truth began moving toward the sidewalk instead of waiting for the sidewalk to come to it. Chief Marcus Brooks guided the unmarked department sedan through the familiar streets of Brookhaven with the same calm focus that had carried him through more than 25 years of public service. He did not activate emergency lights because there was no emergency requiring speed. He did not request a police escort because authority never needed an audience. As the downtown buildings came into view, he reflected on a lesson he often shared with new officers entering the academy. A leader's first responsibility was not to prove someone wrong. It was to make certain the truth was given every opportunity to be seen. Several blocks ahead, the peaceful rhythm of the town continued beneath the warm afternoon sun, yet one corner of Franklin Avenue remained unusually quiet. The gathering had neither grown into chaos nor disappeared. Instead, it had settled into an uneasy stillness. Parents stood beside their children. Store owners remained near their entrances. The college student continued recording from the same respectful distance, while the retired schoolteacher quietly observed without saying another word. No one shouted. No one interfered. They simply watched as time slowly transformed an ordinary encounter into something that felt increasingly significant. Maya Brooks remained exactly where she had been asked to wait. Her shoulders stayed relaxed, her breathing steady, and her attention focused on the conversation before her. Although she had already answered every question truthfully, she responded to each new one with the same patience she had shown from the beginning. She knew frustration would accomplish nothing, and she refused to let another person's assumptions decide the kind of person she would become. The unopened paper bag from the bakery still rested nearby, reminding her that children at the community youth center were probably wondering why she had not arrived with the promised treats. Ryan Cole noticed the crowd watching more closely than before. He could feel their attention even when no one spoke. Still, he convinced himself that ending the encounter too soon might suggest uncertainty. His confidence had quietly become commitment, and commitment had become reluctance to reconsider. Every verified record remained unchanged. Every answer Maya gave remained consistent. Yet instead of allowing the evidence to reshape his thinking, he continued searching for a reason to justify his first impression. Inside the communications center, Angela Morris monitored the secure radio channel and noticed that Chief Brooks's unmarked vehicle had entered the downtown district. She transmitted only the information he had requested. Scene remains calm. Moments later, Sergeant Daniel Ross arrived nearby in another department vehicle. He parked without activating emergency lights and remained several yards from the gathering, careful not to interrupt the encounter. His presence was deliberate but quiet. Captain Olivia Grant followed shortly afterward, carrying nothing more than a tablet containing the secured recordings already collected from the department systems. Neither supervisor approached Ryan immediately. They understood that the next few moments required observation rather than interruption. Then, almost unnoticed by the crowd, the unmarked sedan rolled smoothly toward the curb and came to a gentle stop beneath the shade of an old oak tree. The engine became silent. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. Chief Marcus Brooks stepped onto the sidewalk with the calm confidence of someone who had already reviewed every available fact before taking a single step forward. Several officers in the area recognized him instantly and instinctively straightened their posture. Conversations faded into complete silence. Ryan slowly turned after noticing the sudden change around him, unaware that the quiet figure now walking toward the center of the gathering had not come to defend a family member, but to defend the principle that justice must always begin with the truth. Chief Marcus Brooks walked forward without urgency, acknowledging Sergeant Daniel Ross and Captain Olivia Grant with a brief nod before directing his full attention toward Officer Ryan Cole. The sidewalk remained completely silent. Even the distant sounds of traffic seemed to fade as every person nearby watched the quiet exchange about to unfold. Ryan immediately stood straighter, believing he was about to explain what he considered a routine encounter. Marcus stopped several feet away, his expression calm and unreadable. Years of experience had taught him that the strongest leaders rarely needed to raise their voices. "Officer Cole," he began evenly, "please explain your decision from the beginning." Ryan described the sequence of events exactly as he remembered them. He explained what had first drawn his attention, why he decided to initiate the stop, and why he believed additional questions were necessary. He spoke confidently, convinced that his experience justified the choices he had made. Marcus listened without allowing every sentence to reach its natural conclusion. When Ryan finished, The chief asked his next question in the same measured tone. Did the records inquiry confirm her identity? Ryan answered immediately. Yes, sir. Did the records reveal any outstanding warrants? No, sir. Any alerts indicating she presented a danger to the public? No, sir. Marcus nodded once before continuing. During your conversation, did she refuse your lawful instructions? Ryan hesitated briefly. No, sir. Did she attempt to leave? No, sir. Did she threaten you or anyone else? Ryan lowered his eyes for a moment before quietly answering. No, sir. Each response seemed to make the afternoon even quieter than before. The witnesses exchanged uncertain glances, realizing that every answer pointed toward the same conclusion. Marcus allowed a brief silence to settle over the sidewalk before turning toward Maya. She remained composed exactly as she had been since the encounter began. Without a word of complaint, she met his eyes with calm confidence. Marcus reached into the pocket of his department jacket and removed a supervisor's handcuff key. With deliberate care, he unlocked the restraints and stepped back, allowing Maya to lower her hands naturally. She gently rubbed her wrists for only a moment before letting her hands rest comfortably at her sides. There was no celebration in her expression, no satisfaction, and no anger. Only quiet dignity. Marcus then faced Ryan once more. Officer Cole, he said softly, there is one fact you did not know today. Ryan looked from the chief to Maya, uncertain where the conversation was leading. Marcus continued without changing his calm expression. Her name is Maya Brooks. Ryan nodded slightly, already aware of the information from the records check. Marcus waited another second before finishing the sentence that changed everything. She is also my daughter. No one spoke. The crowd remained perfectly still as the meaning of those words settled over the sidewalk. Ryan's confident posture slowly disappeared, replaced by unmistakable disbelief. For the first time since the encounter had begun, he realized that the person standing before him had never relied on influence, position, or family connections. She had relied only on patience, honesty, and the expectation that facts would eventually matter. Marcus looked across the gathered witnesses before speaking one final time. Today is not about who my daughter is. It is about whether every citizen receives the same fairness, the same respect, and the same careful judgment. His words hung in the afternoon air long after he finished speaking, reminding everyone present that the most powerful truth revealed that day was not the identity of the young woman standing beside him, but the standard by which justice should always be measured. The silence that followed Chief Marcus Brooks's words carried more weight than any raised voice ever could. Officer Ryan Cole stood motionless as the reality of the afternoon settled over him piece by piece. He had believed the encounter was about instinct, procedure, and caution. Now he understood that every decision he had made would be measured against something far more important than personal confidence. It would be measured against evidence, policy, and the public trust. Chief Brooks did not continue the conversation on the sidewalk. He had no intention of conducting an investigation before an audience. Instead, he turned calmly toward Captain Olivia Grant. Captain, ensure every recording is preserved exactly as collected. Body camera footage, dashboard camera footage, traffic camera footage, dispatch logs, and all associated reports will be secured for administrative review. Olivia answered immediately. Yes, Chief. Sergeant Daniel Ross quietly stepped beside Ryan and spoke with the same professionalism that had defined the entire afternoon. Officer Cole, another supervisor will complete the remainder of today's field responsibilities. Please accompany me back to headquarters. There was no public humiliation, no dramatic confrontation, no accusations shouted across the street. The department followed the same procedures it expected every officer to respect. Ryan removed himself from the active call without protest, his earlier certainty replaced by thoughtful silence. As he walked toward the patrol vehicle, he glanced once toward Maya. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply met his eyes for a brief moment before looking away, choosing dignity over triumph. That quiet decision affected several witnesses more deeply than any angry response could have. Around the intersection, people slowly returned to their ordinary routines. The bakery owner finally picked up the paper bag that had waited untouched for nearly an hour and handed it to Maya with a gentle smile. The children are still going to be happy to see you, he said softly. Maya thanked him, accepted the bag, and assured him that she would still make it to the community center before the afternoon activities ended. The college student lowered his phone after recording the final moments of the encounter. Watching the complete sequence had changed his understanding of accountability. He realized that cameras alone did not create justice. Honest people willing to preserve the truth did. Back at Brookhaven Police Headquarters, the administrative process began exactly as department policy required. Captain Olivia Grant cataloged every recording into the secure evidence management system. Dispatch communications were archived. Computer inquiry logs were preserved. Witness contact information was documented. Internal Affairs was notified that a complete administrative review would begin before the end of the business day. Chief Brooks deliberately removed himself from direct supervisory authority over the investigation because of his personal relationship to Maya. An assistant chief accepted responsibility for overseeing the review, ensuring that every conclusion would rest upon verified facts rather than personal influence. That decision quietly reinforced the very principle Marcus had defended throughout his career. Justice could never ask citizens to trust a process that refused to hold itself to the same standard. As evening settled over Brookhaven, the hallway outside the administrative offices remained calm while investigators assembled timelines, reports, recordings, and witness statements into a complete picture of the afternoon. Every camera told the same story from a different angle. Every verified record confirmed the same facts. Every documented minute narrowed the distance between assumption and truth. For Officer Ryan Cole, the longest hours of his career were no longer unfolding on a downtown sidewalk. They had only just begun inside the quiet rooms where evidence spoke more clearly than memory, and where every decision would ultimately be judged not by intention alone, but by whether it honored the oath carried behind the badge. Several weeks passed before the administrative review reached its final conclusion, but inside the Brookhaven Police Department no one attempted to rush the process. Every witness statement was compared with the body camera footage. Every dispatch log was matched against the computer records inquiry. Every minute captured by traffic cameras, business security systems, and civilian recordings reinforced the same sequence of events. Facts replaced assumptions with remarkable consistency. The review determined that Officer Ryan Cole had continued the detention long after the available evidence supported doing so and had failed to adjust his decisions when verified information contradicted his original suspicions. The department concluded that the issue was not a single mistake made in a difficult moment. It was a pattern of judgment that no longer reflected the standards expected of someone trusted with public authority. After the review board completed its recommendations, Ryan's employment with the department came to an end. The announcement contained no dramatic language and no public spectacle. It simply stated that accountability required every employee, regardless of position, to meet the same professional expectations. The decision became an important reminder throughout the department that policies existed not to protect authority, but to protect fairness. Training sessions were expanded in the months that followed. New officers studied the incident without names attached to the case, focusing instead on how quickly assumptions could influence decisions when evidence was ignored. Veteran supervisors emphasized the importance of slowing down, verifying facts, and allowing objective information to guide every encounter. Body camera recordings were no longer viewed simply as investigative tools. They became teaching tools, demonstrating that integrity often depended upon what happened after an officer realized the facts no longer supported a first impression. Across Brookhaven, the story spread quietly through conversations rather than headlines. Residents remembered less about the administrative outcome than they did about the young woman who had remained respectful throughout an experience that would have tested anyone's patience. Maya Brooks returned to the Community Youth Center the very next weekend. The children greeted her with the same excitement they always had, unaware that the paper bag of pastries she carried now represented far more than an afternoon snack. To Maya, that was exactly how she wanted it. She never accepted invitations to speak publicly about the incident, never criticized the department, and never used her father's position to gain attention. When friends asked why, she simply answered that justice was strongest when it changed systems instead of creating new enemies. One quiet evening after work, Chief Marcus Brooks sat with Maya on the front porch of the family home as the last light of the day faded across the neighborhood. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, Marcus looked toward his daughter and asked a simple question. When everything became difficult, what helped you stay calm? Maya smiled gently before answering. Because I knew the truth did not need me to become someone else in order to survive. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding that her answer carried the very lesson every officer should remember. A badge can grant authority, but it can never replace character. Authority commands attention for a moment. Character earns trust for a lifetime. And on one ordinary Saturday afternoon in Brookhaven, the most powerful person on the sidewalk was never the one wearing the badge. It was the one who carried dignity so faithfully that when the truth finally arrived, it did not need to raise its voice to be heard.